Let me start with the words of Dr. Hans Diehl. He says, a society that goes from eating at home to eating out, a society that goes from eating beans to burgers, from eating potatoes to Pringles, corn to corn chips, water to soda, which means aerated drinks, fizzy drinks, cold drinks, sweet beverages, that is, also goes from lean to large. Let me repeat that again. A society that goes from eating at home to eating out, goes from eating beans to burgers, potatoes to Pringles, corn to corn chips, water to soda, also goes from lean to large. Now let me ask you a question. A starch-based diet with addition of fruits and vegetables has never failed a population of billions of people. If it did, what about the rice-eating 1.7 billion slim Asians? Do you have an answer? In reality, excuse me, overconsumption of certain dietary components is a major concern for Americans and now most parts of the world. While many foods are involved, chief among them is the disproportionate consumption of high-fat foods, often at the expense of foods high in complex carbs and fiber that may be more conducive to health. Here's what Dr. John McDougall, the author of the bestseller The Starch Solution, has been saying for 40 plus years. All large populations of trim, healthy people throughout all verifiable human history have obtained the bulk of their calories from starch. Examples of once thriving people include Japanese, Chinese, and other Asians eating sweet potatoes, buckwheat, and or rice. Incas in South America eating potatoes, Mayans and Aztecs in Central America eating corn, and Egyptians in the Middle East eating wheat. Ask almost anyone what they need to do to lose a few pounds and they'd probably say, cut back on the carbs. While the low carb movement has waxed and waned in popularity since the Atkins revival of the late 90s and early 2000s, most folks now assume that carbohydrates are inherently fattening. Health conscious diners order bunless burgers, hamburgers, skip the baked potato side dish and send the bread basket back to the kitchen, or don't and feel guilty about it. But remember, not all carbs are created equal. There are many different types of carbohydrate containing foods and they vary greatly in their health effects. Although carbs are often referred to as simple versus complex, I personally find whole versus refined to make more sense. Whole carbs are unprocessed and contain fiber found naturally in the food, while refined carbs have been processed and had the natural fiber stripped out. Examples of whole carbs include vegetables, whole fruit, legumes, potatoes, and whole grains. These foods are absolutely healthy. On the other hand, refined carbs include sugar-sweetened beverages, fruit juices, pastries, white bread, white pasta, among others. Numerous studies show that refined carbohydrates consumption is associated with health problems like obesity and type 2 diabetes. They tend to cause a major spike in blood sugar levels, which leads to a subsequent crash that can trigger hunger and cravings for more high carb foods. This is the blood sugar roller coaster that many people are familiar with. Refined carbs are usually also lacking in essential nutrients. In other words, they are mainly empty calories. The added sugars, oblique fats, are another story altogether. They are the absolute worst carbohydrates and linked to all sorts of chronic diseases. However, it makes no sense to demonize all carbohydrate containing foods because of the health effect of their processed counterparts.
And the vegetable that most Americans eat is the potato, which is a whole natural food and it's perfectly healthy. Potato gets a bad rap because of the company it keeps. How do most Americans eat their potatoes? as French fries or potato chips, which are fried in sugar, oil, and salt, baked potatoes stuffed with sour cream and butter, or potato skins with cheddar cheese and bacon. But there are ways to eat potatoes that are perfectly healthy, such as steaming, boiling, baking, or even microwaving, and then topping with a delicious low-fat topping such as salsa, hummus, or even guacamole. You know, I even like barbecue sauce on my potatoes. You can make a whole meal centered around potatoes. They're so inexpensive. I like to bake a potato and stuff it with corn and beans and a little salsa. It's a meal unto itself. And if you don't like white potatoes for any reason, how about yams or sweet potatoes?
Whole food sources of carbohydrates are loaded with nutrients and fiber and don't cause the same spikes and dips in blood sugar levels. Hundreds of studies on the high fiber carbohydrates, including vegetables, fruits, legumes, and other whole grains, show that eating them is linked to improved metabolic health and a lower incidence of disease. Bottom line, not all carbs are created equal. Refined carbs are associated with obesity and metabolic diseases, but the unprocessed, natural carbohydrate foods are very healthy. Consuming a whole food, plant-based, high carbohydrate diet in which 75 to 80% of the total energy or calories come from plants minimizes health weight by shifting the distribution of energy to physical activity and the production of body heat rather than long-term storage of fat. Weight gain, it turns out, has nothing to do with the number of calories we consume and everything to do with the way these calories are used by the body. High fat, high protein diets like the low carb diets are consistently associated with higher, not lower, rates of several cancers, heart disease, and other diseases. While studies show that plant-based diets have the opposite effect. The paleo diet is uncivilized and unhealthy and untrue. Low carb or low carbohydrate diets are fueling the destruction of human health and our planet Earth. Low carbohydrate means a diet high in animal foods and low in plant foods. In simple words, only plants synthesize carbohydrates or sugars. The current fad involves several different diets that are variations of the same theme, low carbohydrate. There are several contenders, the Atkins, the Zone, the Sugar Busters, Protein Power, and a few others, that vary in the severity of the carbohydrate restriction recommendation, but the evil carbohydrate concept is the same. Low carb diets are high in saturated fat and therefore dangerous. On a low carb diet, you're encouraged to eat foods like meat and eggs, which happen to be rich in saturated fat and cholesterol. This is claimed to cause all sorts of problems, raise your LDL cholesterol and risk of heart disease and whatnot. Many of these diets accelerate atherosclerosis because they are high in saturated fat and cholesterol. Additionally, because LCDs, low carbohydrate diets, significantly limit the intake of fresh fruit, whole grains, and vegetables, all the well-described preventive health benefits of these foods are lost. For starters, these benefits include reduced risk of cancer and heart disease, and enhanced immune function. These are benefits that should not be chucked out of the window just because an unproven fat diet says so. Finally, the high protein load of LCDs or low carbohydrate diets may have negative consequences for the liver, for the kidney, and the bones, which is in terms of osteoporosis. These last have not been conclusively proven, but I think that is exactly the point. The other glaring fact for athletes is that there is no better way to completely thrash out your performance than a low carb diet. So I'll finish the part 1 out here, only to join you in part number 2, where I'll carry this discussion further. Guys, I hope you found this information useful. You have a good day, and please do subscribe if you still haven't, if you feel it's worthy. Bye-bye.